All righty. Well, thank you. This is not where we want to be on today, but we're here. I couldn't be more proud of this group of individuals behind me. People that come from various backgrounds, various places of the state. We represent 46% of this state in population and the majority of the land mass. We brought those voices down here as much as we could in this very historic super minority situation that we're in. So being in that position, it makes it really hard to figure out how we can still contribute to our districts and how we can stand up for our Republican principles and the things that we believe in this state. Unfortunately, we feel like we spent an inordinate amount of time on ideological issues this session with guns and abortion and even some of the crime issues, and didn't spend quite enough time, especially in the last waning days of the session, working on issues that truly impact every single Colorado citizen in the state. We're down here representing our districts, but also as a collective to make sure that the right thing is done for this state in its entirety. What we saw through this session is an overwhelming majority, an overwhelming amount of power that the opposition side had. The majority was clearly the majority. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough this session. There was still a need to implement rules that have never been used or rarely used in the history of the state, to continue to jam through an agenda that obviously we don't agree with. And we would expect that. We would probably do the same thing if we were in that position. However, I don't think we would go as far as to truly silence the voices of our constituents. Not only for that, we bring a lot of expertise to the table. Everyone behind me has done something and contributed something outside of this political arena. Most of them are new, first time they've even been in an elected position. And what they bring is the purity of this process. And this process is truly designed to take the voices from all corners of the state, meld them into one room, and come out with answers. Whether you agree with them or not, those voices should at least be heard. We feel that didn't happen much this session, primarily through the use of rules. That culminated, unfortunately, with a day that should have been full of celebration, and that we had made it 120 days with us finally just saying there's really nothing we can do. The only difference between us being outside and enjoying the Colorado sunset and the results on that board were, quite frankly, the color of our names that were up there. Didn't slow things down either much. It continued to bowl right through. The vote was the same. We're saddened that the process was, in some regards, really gone in the wrong direction through this session. There's always an opportunity to look to your left and right with your colleague that you may or may not agree with ideologically, but understand that they're an assessor or they're a county commissioner or they've been a mayor. They can bring that part to the conversation. What we saw go down in the last 72 hours blatantly did not bring in the voices of the people in this that work on this floor, but much more importantly, the voices that those people represent. And we were pinged left and right by our constituents and leaders in our local communities that really wanted to have input on one of the most major pieces of legislation that this legislature will hear, which was 303, Proposition HH. And those voices really were not heard at all. The real stakeholders in those are the county commissioners, the municipalities, the folks that benefit from property tax. And their voices truly weren't heard. So it's one thing through a process to silence us individually on this floor. But what they're really silencing are those voices that need to be brought to make better policy, not because on tax policy there's not a lot of ideology there. That is truly everybody's income in this state, goes to things that the government is required to do to keep our communities beautiful, to keep our communities safe, to keep them functional. These are not ideological things. And the fact that the governor took advantage of his position to manipulate this body, which should have stood up and said, look, Governor, we know best. We know what the people are saying. They chose not to do that and bull a a proposition through that, but that has continued through the process, continued to have what I would call bribery for the citizens of Colorado through House Bill 1311, which basically says if you're not going to vote for this, you're not going to get any tax money. If you're below $50,000 in this state in income, you will receive nothing as Tabor exists right now. But if you vote for Proposition HH, you suddenly will get a check in the mail. That is just a clean way of playing this. But that wasn't quite enough. The amendments that we were talking against before we were shut down were another bribe, if you will, a bribe to the fire departments and the EMS, some of the essential services that we expect out of our government. Those were brought to bear, and to make sure that we continue to get the support of those folks. So that explains kind of what went down last night. And once again, it didn't matter. It didn't slow the process down, and we got to enjoy a good Colorado sunset. That's all I got. Yeah.
Some of the Democrats last night said that they are tired of working with members of your caucus, calling some of them very, very, very bad men. How do you react to that, and will you continue to work with Democrats?
Sure. Well, it's unfortunate that they would take that unprofessional approach. You know, we could pretty easily say that, but everyone behind me rises up to say, I don't care if they're good or bad. If they've got something to contribute to the conversation, we'll sit at that table. We'll bring those voices down. I'm not sure, why it would be brought to a visceral issue, but that kind of explains the process and the way this has gone down. It's been kind of distilled down to, oh, you're not good or you're not bad. Unfortunately, we can put our ideology aside and talk about the issues. So I'm saddened to hear that. I know that everybody behind me brought a good, honest debate to this floor when it was heard.
Where do you feel like Senate Republicans let you down by not filibustering the property tax bill, the Tabor bill? They easily could have killed those measures.
Some of the Republicans?
And the Senate.
Oh.
Yes. In the Senate, they easily could have killed these measures, run the clock out, try to delay like y'all did over here. They didn't follow your tactics, your playbook.
Yeah.
Do you wish that they took a harder line this session?
You know, I'm pretty excited that the Senate did what they did. I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I think they put all the they were responsible for a whole lot of bad things happening in this not happening in this state. They did the yeoman's work, and we're proud to call them a partner.
Question for Mary Ann.
Thank you. Where do you feel you were most successful in this session?
You know, I would say I think we actually were able to get more amendments on this session than in previous sessions. So, you know, I think that comes from them being dealt with an issue that they really didn't know anything about. And when you sit down a mayor or an assessor or a county commissioner or somebody who's ran a Fortune 500 company next to them, they listened. So we did have some success there. I would say on rural issues where there's really no expertise other than the people that stand behind me, those voices were allowed to be heard in certain instances.
Minority Leader, besides the sunset, what did you get out of walking out and not voting?
Well, if you think about the result, it's the same, right? Except for we made a statement. We see this happen all the time in democracy. We see it around Denver when we see protests out our window all the time. We were out of tools. They had used all of their tools on us, and we used all of our tools of simply protesting by walking out. So what we accomplished is we made a statement that we're not gonna participate in what we believe is really bad legislation that did not have any proper stakeholding to it.
How is that any different than voting no?
We're talking about it right now.
Minority Leader, with regard to Proposition HH and marrying, property taxes to Tabor refunds, what would you have liked to have seen happen?
Well, what I'd like to have seen is a lot of stakeholding. We believe that there was months of work done. We were told that. Matter of fact, from the well, we were told that 200 meetings had occurred about this. I immediately asked my caucus, did anybody hear about these meetings? And to a person, nobody had heard about these meetings going on. So number one, some stakeholding to go on there for sure. I don't think it's fair to attach those two issues together. They're really different. They're coming from a different tax revenue source. So why would those two things be attached? And it's pretty blatant what's going on. You get one thing if you vote for this. That just isn't a genuine way of getting people to think about what they're voting about in Prop HH instead of thinking about what they get if they do.
Mr. Minority Leader, I just want to get a response to this. The governor just suggested that you guys left and went to a bar last night. I wanted to.
No.
Of course he did. Stood right out there waiting.
Yeah.
And you saw it.
Yeah.
And then
Just so you know, none of us left state property.
Correct.
Yeah, we never left.
I wanted to give you guys a chance to
I'm
respond.
clarifying it for you, right?
Yeah.
We all stayed on state property.
And then secondarily, the House Speaker said we were hired to do one specific thing in this General Assembly, and that is to cast a vote. Our responsibility is to represent our constituents with our voice through the voting process. Hoping you could respond to that.
We
too.
weren't
Yeah.
given a chance.
Yeah, well,
How many Rule 14s? How many Rule 16s? How about that voice?
When you're silenced, you don't have a voice.
You can't speak, you have no voice.
I agree. I mean, once again, that board did not change other than the color of our names. And that's unfortunate that it wasn't heard. They used every rule on us, and we used a unique approach. We didn't do that not knowing with a whole bunch of legislation left. That was the last item. They had arranged the calendar for that to be the last item. We would have thought long and hard if we thought we were missing votes that mattered. We for sure did not want to be party to the governor's attempt to destroy the taxpayer Bill of Rights in this state. So the fact that we didn't participate in that, I don't think we regret that at all.
Minority Leader, I asked you this the other day, but obviously things have transpired since. You said that you felt you guys did better than maybe you could have expected this year. I can't remember the metaphor you used, like hitting above your weight, whatever.
Yeah.
So how do you, with the amendments you got, the relationship you got with the Speaker and Majority Leader, so how do you square we did better than we thought we did with protest, everything you're saying now?
Yeah.
How do those two?
Well, when we had that conversation, it was way before the last 4 days, if you will, of session, right? And they did an incredible amount of introduction of big bills in the last few days. So at that point, I would say we were able to negotiate and get some good things done for our districts, and that would have been a nice ending to this. But unfortunately, because this body refuses to stand up to the governor and say, we know better, we are the legislature, you are the governor. We understand that you may want something, but you need to go through the process just like anybody else. And instead, they buckled under and said, no, we're going to do the governor's bidding on this without the proper amount of stakeholding, without the proper amount of work that needs to go into this. So when we had that conversation, I would say that. But the bills that came in the following days proved a different response.
To follow up quickly on the question John asked, the Democrats had a caucus meeting last night that had some kind of inter-party criticism, but part of the ending was some Democratic members saying, why should we work with Republicans? The rhetoric has been so bad. Some of them have gotten threats. Why?
Yeah.
The speaker said she wants a reset with you guys.
Yeah.
Some of the members don't think that should happen because of how tense
Yeah.
things got.
Unfortunately,
That's the question.
yeah, no, unfortunately, I guess when somebody gets bad responses on Twitter, they decide to make a big deal about it.
Sorry, some of them said they've got like rape and death threats. I think that's maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not saying you guys have it, but I just don't want to have it distilled down to bad comments on Twitter.
We actually arrested somebody that threatened our lives.
yeah, just, yeah.
I get it.
So this is a game where you got to kind of have some thick skin, and unfortunately, whenever they had any pushback from us, their thick skin got pretty thin, because we had members who literally had somebody arrested because of death threats. We deal with the same thing. We just happen to take it a little better than they do.
They threatened to come to my home.
Yeah.
One more question for the Minority Leader, and then yes, Gabrielle.
Okay, so we talked a lot about the property tax measure the Tabor measure, we haven't talked much about 259 and the way that that vote process played out. There were some people who came to the floor and mentioned that this is why people
Which one's
don't
259?
trust government, the casino measure.
Oh, the casino measure,
the
yeah.
one that happened
Yeah.
Saturday night.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit and just sort of respond to those concerns that this is why people don't trust government?
Well, you know, it's funny how those complaints come from within their caucus when a rule is applied and they don't like it. And then people ask us why we walk out of the building, right? And so that's kind of a dichotomy that I don't get. I mean, they use their own rules, and members of their own caucus didn't like it, and so they protested about it. So, you know, I don't have a lot of sympathy for folks that are complaining about the rules being used against them, because we had that go on the entire session. I also have the bill sponsor. If you want to talk about that too, it's his bill. So, you know, I think what we're seeing is what's happened with the majority caucus is they're getting a little too big, and we're beginning to see what's happening when they have to deal with diverse interests and they can't, you know, align everything. What we hope the result of that is that they will continue to stand up for their districts and their constituents and not fall right along a party line. Nobody behind me votes the way that I ask them to vote, that they feel that they have to vote. And last night we just didn't vote. No, but so I think this is going to be healthy for the majority party to go through some of these dissensions and disagreements. We deal with it all the time because we truly are independent elected sovereigns that come down here. So not part of a political machine that's put them in a position. So I think this is good, healthy debate that should be had. But there's not a lot of sympathy coming from me when somebody's complaining about rules being applied.
And the narrative for 259 as well as it needs to be known that it's a bipartisan bill. It's 19 Republicans and it's 14 Democrats. It's not an only Republican conspiracy theory. So this was well stakeholdered and put through by the voters in this chamber. I think that needs to be recognized and understood. It's not a Republican problem. It's truly an effort of bipartisanship that came together and passed a bill.
All right, everybody. Our members are going to hang around, so if you have questions for them individually, please feel free to grab them. They'll stick around for a little bit.
Great, thank you guys.
And we appreciate you guys coming and hope you get some downtime in the interim.
Everybody can speak.